So let's improve how we're using those attributes. So here in our controller, we can see that there's some duplication of the API, right? We're repeating this magic string a couple of times, and as a developer, that feels a little weird. So we can actually specify another parameter called route prefix, and this is going to allow us to say that the beginning part of all the routes for stats is here at the controller level, and then the route for get has no other parameters. And the route for this get is just the ID. And so in this way, you're not repeating any of that information, and later on, you could see changing this to a new API and having it cascade to the rest of the routes very naturally. And so this feels a lot better. If we build this, we'll see our API calls still work. So straight to the stats, straight to the number of foods, and straight to the number of users. That all works. Great. But what if we don't want to use that prefix? They've made allowances for that as well. So let's say that we have a number of calls here where the route prefix is exactly correct. But I have these couple of gets down here, or this one get, that I don't want to use that prefix. I want to be able to define the prefix myself. All you have to do is start it with a tilde character, and it'll know that it's an override. It'll know that you're going to start at the root instead of it being relative to the prefix. This should be familiar if you've done any ASP.NET work before, because this is the way it also tells it to go to the root of the application for different sorts of links. So if I say here stat instead of stat, so that I'm looking for an individual stat, I'm telling it that to use the prefix for all the routes except for this one where I'm making an exception. So if I build it, we can see that stats still works, but that going to stats.1 no longer works. It's going to give us a 404 because we've told it that the real API for each of these stats is just the word stat, and then those will continue to work. You can see now that you can use that prefix to really prevent the repeating of the data, but also be able to override that in cases where you need to have exceptions to the simple routing that you may have on the entire controller. It's important to note that even though one of your calls doesn't actually extend this prefix, we still need a route with an empty string in it so that it knows that this is going to be a routed method. So by using a prefix, it doesn't automatically create routes for each property. You're going to have to use route on each property to do those routes.